Alright, here we are on day 2's lesson. So we're going to start here with the distributive property. So the first thing I'm going to do is multiply 3.2 times 0.1, because this is part of our distributive property. And when I multiply 3.2 times 0.1, I get 0.32, and then it's going to be 3.2 times 2.9x. So you're going to have a variable on this one, and you're going to have negative 9.28 x. And then now, since you did this, sometimes I like to cross it off, and you're only left with negative 3.8x is less than negative 52, so just write that. So negative 3.8x is less than negative 52. Alright, so now we're left with this problem. So this is going to be a little different than yesterday, because first, before we can start removing things from sides, we have to combine our like terms. So we have negative 9.28 and negative 3.8x. And when we combine those, because they're both negatives, you have to add them up. And you're going to end up getting, when you combine these terms, you're going to end up getting negative 13.08x. And that's going to be, so you get rid of those now, and that's going to be less than negative 52. And then I did forget, do not forget to carry down your 0.32 here. So it's going to be 0.32 minus 13.08x is less than negative 52. Now we're just down to a two-step equation. So remember, get rid of any addition or subtraction numbers first. So right here we have just a 0.32 hanging out, so we're going to want to subtract 0.32 from both sides. Subtract 0.32 and subtract 0.32. And when you do that, these cancel out. And you're left with, on this side, negative 13.08x is less than whatever negative 52 minus 0.32 is. Since they're both negatives again, you're going to add them up. So you're going to end up with negative 52.32. Alright, so now I'm down to a one-step equation. I have negative 13.08x, or you can think of it as negative 13.08 times x is less than negative 52.32. So doing this, I want to undo this multiplication, so I'm going to divide by 13.08. And remember, if this is negative, you got to divide by a negative so that you get a positive variable. So divide by negative 13.08, and of course do the same thing to the other side. Divide by negative 13.08. Okay. And when you do that, these two negatives cancel out, so you're just left with x. And then since you did divide by a negative by your variable, you do have to flip your sign. So it's going to be greater than negative 52.32 divided by negative 13.08. And when you do that, you actually get a positive 4, believe it or not. So it turns into a nice whole number after all that. So then all we're going to have you guys do from here is graph it. We won't check this one. It's pretty crazy, but you sure could if you wanted to. It would just take you some time. Put your solution right in the middle, and then x has to be larger, so it's going to get bigger. Okay, so draw your arrow towards the larger numbers. And then since there's no equal to as part of your inequality sign, you don't fill it in, so you just leave it open. So that's number 2. Alright, now on number 3. So this is going to be just like number 2, but it's with fractions. So if you think you're comfortable with doing the distributive property, then combining like terms, and then doing your two-step and one-step process, and want to give this one a try, go ahead, stop the video, and then you can go to the answer and see if you got it right. So I have here the distributive property, so I want to start with this first. And for me, it really helps to underline this when it gets this complicated. So I'm going to underline this, okay? Don't need that dot there. And now I'm going to start that. So negative 7.5, or 7 halves, not 7.5, negative 7 halves times negative 3y. So I'm going to end up with a positive because you have two negatives here. And when you do that, you get 10 and a half y. 10 and 1 half y. Don't forget to carry your variable, and it is positive because your two numbers were negative. And then plus, or you could end up doing minus, but we're going to plus, negative 7 halves times 1 half. And when you do that, you get negative 1 3/4. So negative 1 3/4. Now, if your calculator is giving those to you in improper fractions, that's okay too. Okay, so your fractions could look a little different, but they should simplify to what I have here. Alright, so I did the distributive property, so now I just want to carry down everything else. I actually like to scribble out what I just did and what's left out over. So I have negative 2y over here, negative 2y, and then since that's a positive, we'll throw a plus. So negative 2y plus 10 and a half y plus negative 1 3/4 is less than or greater than or equal to negative 63 halves. So what that means, negative 63 halves, just means you have 63 cut in half. So it'd be a decimal if you did it that way. But I would keep it at 63 halves. Alright, so step 2 again is to combine your like terms. In this one we have 2y here and 10 and a half y here, negative 2y here and 10 and a half y here, so we can combine these guys. So let's do that. So if you have negative 2y plus 10 and a half y, your signs are different on your two numbers, so you subtract. Okay, and you're left with 8 and a half y. Okay, and it would be positive because you have more positives than negatives. And then now you did that, you can cancel that out and just carry everything else down just as it is, plus negative 1 3/4 is greater than or equal to negative 60, maybe I can write this neater, 63 halves. Alright, now I'm down to a two-step equation like yesterday. Okay, so if I want to start away from my variable, is one way to think about it. Start with any subtraction or addition. Alright, so here we have a negative 1 3/4, or you could think of it as a minus 1 3/4, so you undo that by adding the opposite, which would be positive 1 3/4, plus 1 3/4, and plus 1 3/4. Okay, and when you do that, you get, I should have switched colors here, I forgot, I apologize for that. So when you do that, these cancel out, and you're left with, just on the side, 8 and 1 half y is greater than or equal to 63 halves plus 1 3/4. And when you add those up, you get, believe it or not, 29 3/4. And I spoke incorrectly there. You have a negative and a positive, so you're actually going to subtract the difference. You're going to end up with a negative amount because you have way more negatives than positives. So negative, you get negative 29 3/4. And remember, you don't just add those up because your signs are different. We're having some mistakes with that, so be careful. You have to subtract the difference. So that's why you end up with 29 3/4. Now you're down to a one-step equation. You have to get rid of this multiplication. So to do that, you divide by what's being multiplied. In this case, it's 8 and a half. 1 half divide by 8 and 1 half. And you're left with, you're not dividing or multiplying here by a, you're not dividing or multiplying by a negative, so you don't flip the sign, so you're just going to have these cancel out, and you're left with y is greater than or equal to a negative, because you have one negative and one positive, so your answer is going to be negative. When you do that, you get negative 3 and a half. Negative 3 and 1 half. Okay, so now we're just left with the graphing part. Make your graph over here. Let's do it in green. Okay, so y is greater than, start with my open circle, negative 3 and a half, so 3 and 1 half negative, and y has to be greater than that. So you know your line's going to go this way. Now remember, because it's all your solutions have to be larger than negative 3 and a half. Remember, in this case, it's y is greater than or equal to. I was reading that wrong. Y is greater than or equal to negative 3 and a half. So 3 and a half is a solution, negative 3 and a half. So you need to shade that in. All right. So at this time you can go ahead and see if you did it right, if you did it on your own, and we will start the homework as long as we have these checked off.